Hello everyone and a very good morning to you. This is Rachel live from 𝐾𝐿 Studios and you're watching The Opening Bell. In this show we'll take a look at the Australian share market opening along with global and domestic drivers triggering market momentum. Now the Australian share market opened higher this morning after US stocks closed little changed overnight. The US Federal Reserve has given no clue when it might begin to taper its government bond purchase. However, the Fed yet again says that economic recovery was on its way, even as coronavirus infections were rising. The S&P 500 fell 0.02%, the Dow Jones shed 0.36%, the Nasdaq Composite rose 0.7%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq closed higher overnight, a day after big technology companies like Google, Apple and Microsoft posted strong quarterly earnings. Investors were upbeat after the Federal Reserve reiterated that the US economic recovery is on track, despite the threat posed by the Delta mutant of the COVID-19 virus. In addition, the solid earnings reports of some of the major corporate houses added to the positive sentiments. The central bank on Wednesday decided to maintain its current interest rates after the conclusion of its two-day meeting to discuss the progress of the US economy. Participants also decided to maintain the bank's bond purchase policy that has been blamed for inflation in some quarters. On the recent rise in consumer prices, Chair Jerome Powell says that accelerating inflation resulted from transitionary factors. The Fed is scheduled to release its personal consumption expenditure price index on Friday. The index is considered an important metric to gauge the country's inflation. Meanwhile, the Chinese stock market finally showed signs of stability, that's after being severely hit this week on deepening regulatory crackdown concerns. Looking at the bond market, the yield on the 10-year Treasury notes retreated. That's despite initially climbing after the Fed meeting. The US dollar eased in the absence of a clear timeline for the tapering Fed asset purchase. Now let us skim through the opening trades of the ASX 200. The top performing stocks in this index were Iress and Regis Resources. Financial data and software business Iress aims to double their net profit after tax by 2025. That's according to today's update. Digital property portal Domain Holdings, industrial chemicals company Incitec Pivot and the infant formula player A2 Milk also advanced. Meanwhile, investment companies Spark Infrastructure and the Seven Group were the leading losers on the board. Real estate player Charter Hall, gambling and entertainment company Sky City and miner Chalice Mining, their shares also slipped. Moving on to our next segment now, let us glance through the Asx Sectoral Charter. Currently, IT is the leading sector amid a remarkable Nasdaq performance overnight. Meanwhile, Australian energy players Beach Energy and Woodside Petroleum, their shares traded in the green zone during the early trading hours amid an oil price uptick, following a higher than expected fall of US crude inventories. Brent crude closed 0.4% higher, while West Texas Intermediate crude settled 1% higher. Now let us look to the miners space. Shares in heavyweight miners, the BHP Group, Rio Tinto and Fortescue Metals all traded higher, while slowing Chinese demand for construction material hit Shanghai steel futures, which dipped for a second straight session on Wednesday. With gold, Newcrest Mining, Evolution Mining and Ramelius Resources and Gold Road Resources, all their shares edged higher after the Fed statement that the US economy faces risks from the Delta coronavirus variant. Moving on now, healthcare players CSL, Promedicus and Volpara rose as healthcare stocks provided the most significant boost to the S&P 500 index. Well, now it's time for a very short break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with more updates on the Australian share market.
Crypto talk by 𝐾𝐿. The crypto market has been red hot given the Bitcoin rally since the past year. And now the most famous cryptocurrency has got competitors, Dogecoin and Ethereum. If the crypto market excites you, tune in with me, Sage, to know the latest developments about the existing digital currencies and the new ones that are joining the race. I'll help you understand the opportunities and the risks the crypto market has in store for you. For all the digital currency related developments, continue watching Crypto Talk by 𝐊𝐴𝐼𝐻.
And welcome back. This is Rachel, your host, live from 𝐊𝐼𝐻 Studios, and you're watching the Opening Bell Show. Moving on to our last segment of the show now, let us look at the quick highlights of prominent ASX stocks under the spotlight during early trades this morning. To begin with, shares in online and mobile marketplace 𝐴𝐴𝐺𝐴 rose despite lockdown extensions across some parts of Australia. The company stated that lockdowns in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide had cut gross marketplace value by 12% per week over July. For the financial year ending June 2021, the global marketplace for local services posted operating cash flow of $5.5 million on revenue of $30.5 million. Australia-based gold miner Resolute Mining shares slid on the board amid a production dip. The quarterly production for their June 2021 quarter has fallen by 10% over the previous quarter. In line with the lower production, the gold player has been forced to downgrade its production guidance for the year. The company reported total gold production would be in the range of 315,000 ounces to 340,000 ounces. That's down from 350,000 ounces to 370,000 ounces it had previously quoted. Next up, investment bank and financial services company the Macquarie Group. Their shares slightly dipped after announcing improved trading conditions in the first quarter of financial year 2022. This led the group to deliver net profit contribution significantly higher than the same period last year. However, it continued to maintain a cautious stance with a conservative approach to liquidity, capital and funding. Moving on to the next newsmaker under the spotlight now, shares in building and construction materials company CSR slipped on selling the remaining 12.4 hectare of land at Horsley Park in New South Wales for a total consideration of $124 million. In total, the company has generated total proceeds of $408 million, selling all available sites at the Horsley Park site. Next on the list is Fortescue Metals. Their shares rose on exceeding shipment guidance for the financial year 2021. It contributed by a record shipment in the last quarter amid a strong demand from China. The world's fourth largest iron ore miner fared better than rivals Rio Tinto and BHP, whose June quarter output dropped because of weather disruptions in Western Australia. Now, despite those disruptions, surging prices of the steelmaking ingredient and robust demand from China are expected to drive bumper earnings at miners, with Rio reporting a record first half performance on Wednesday. Meanwhile, health and beauty company Australian Pharmaceutical Industries, their shares are under the spotlight after rejecting a takeover offer from Wesfarmers, saying the bid undervalues the company. And commercial real estate company unibail-rodamco-westfield shares slid while its net income tumbled through the first half of the year on the back of significant COVID-19 related disruptions. Well, that's all from me for now on the early morning trades. But stay tuned to 𝐊𝐼𝐻 TV as we have many more shows lined up for you, sharing live updates on the economy, market and sectors. I'm Rachel, signing off for now.